So which weapon should you use for your Lauma? In this video, I'll be helping you guys choose which weapon is going to be the best for your Lauma for you to build the perfect Lunar Bloom teams. I'm going to be ranking all of her weapons in a tier list based around which of them are going to be the best for her. Before we continue that though, let's just try to explain what does she need on a weapon first, so we understand based around what we're going to be ranking these weapons. So mainly she's just going to be buffing your bloom damage and stuff like that on the team. I'm not going to go too in depth in her kit today, but generally she's going to be doing that throughout her elemental mastery, and a lot of things on her kit are going to be scaling with her elemental mastery. So elemental mastery is going to be your first priority on a weapon for sure. And after that, you'd want to make sure you burst on uptime, so you definitely would want some energy recharge on Lauma. You can get it from multiple sources, but if you can get some from your weapon, it's also not going to be as bad. So energy recharge is definitely not a bad stat to get on your weapon too. It's probably the next best thing you can get on your weapon. So energy recharge is going to be the next best stat you'd want to look for. Those are going to be the two main stats you'd want to look for on Lauma, but there are also some extra stats that are technically good, but they're definitely not necessary at all, especially on her weapon. Some of her damage, like the lunar damage, can crit, so crit rate and crit damage are not going to be terrible too. If you already have enough elemental mastery or energy recharge and you can get some crit from your weapon, that's not going to be bad. It's not going to be that beneficial, but especially in some teams like spread teams, for example, and stuff like that, it's going to be a decent thing to get. Some parts of her kit does scale with a little bit of attack too, so attack is going to be also not wasted, but it's also definitely not a thing you'd want to look for. So mainly you just want to look for elemental mastery and energy recharge, some crit if you can, and then attack is going to be almost completely useless but not fully useless. Plus any supportive capabilities on any weapon for your team, since she's going to be a support character in general, so any like supportive capabilities that can buff her teams in general are going to be appreciated. But yeah, those are the things that you'd want to look for on a weapon for Lauma. Now let's move on and rank the weapons on a tier list. Alright, so first of all, starting off with the magic guide, some of these 3-star weapons are going to be pretty good because the base stack doesn't really matter as much, so we can see some of them being pretty decent. One of them is going to be the magic guide. It's just going to give you elemental mastery. The passive is pretty much completely useless, but just as an elemental mastery stat stick, it can actually work a little bit. So I just throw at B tier, but yeah, it's pretty decent. Brilliant Tales is just HP, so it's D tier. Otherworldly Story, it's just energy recharge. It's also kind of a small amount of energy recharge, so I'd put it as C tier, but it's not useless. Emerald Orb, it's also just going to give you elemental mastery pretty much, but it's going to be a pretty small amount. It's basically just half of what the magic guide is going to give you, so I definitely wouldn't recommend using the Thrill and Tails. I'll just put it as C tier though, put it a high C tier. Twin Nephrite, it's just going to be crit rate, also a very small amount of crit rate. I think probably D tier, honestly. It's just not the weapon you want to use. And then finally Amber Bed is also going to be a pretty decent weapon. I think I put it at low B tier too. It's just going to give you elemental mastery and you can use it under the elemental mastery stat stick. That's it. Now moving on to the 4-star options, we have the Favonius. Favonius is always a decent weapon for any support pretty much. It can give you full energy recharge needs for your Lauma and then also help out your team with energy recharge, so I guess it's a decent option. I put it at low B tier, but it's not the perfect weapon for Lauma since it doesn't really give you any elemental mastery. But if you can get enough elemental mastery on your artifacts or just whatever, then in that case you can use the Favonius on Lauma, I guess, and then it's just gonna give you enough energy for yourself and your team. I definitely don't recommend it, but it's definitely not like a bad weapon. You have the Witsa, it's gonna give you crit damage and then either attack, elemental damage, or elemental mastery. It's just too inconsistent. I mean, some if it can give you like 240 elemental mastery, that's gonna be pretty good, but you get that like a third of the time, so it's not really a good option in my opinion. The crit damage is not gonna be completely useless though, as I said before. So honestly, I don't know. This weapon is a pretty weird weapon. I guess like I put a B tier because a lot of stats here are gonna be usable. No, honestly, I just put a C tier. I think it's just too inconsistent for me, and it's not really the weapon you want to use on Lauma specifically, so I just keep it as C tier. Sacrificial Fragment is going to give you a good amount of elemental mastery, especially for a 4-star weapon, and then it's going to reset your elemental skill, so I guess you can skill twice. I mean, it's good. I'd put it at like A tier, honestly. Decent amount of elemental mastery and then a decent passive, so yeah, just keep it at A tier. It's a pretty decent weapon, especially for 4-star, but I don't think it's S tier because there are many weapons that you can use instead of it. Royal Grimoire, it's just D tier. Solar Pearl, it's just some crit, I guess D tier. Broad type Amber, D tier. Weapon Mare, it's just elemental mastery, a small amount too. Probably put it like C tier. I think that's probably the right place. Blackcliff is just crit damage and then attack. Just for the crit damage, I put it like low C tier. Eye Perception, D tier. Wine and Song is just some energy recharge. I put it C tier. Prosper attack, D tier. Dodico Tails is just D tier. Action Ring is energy recharge. I guess in spread teams it might be a little bit decent, but in general I'll just keep it as C tier. Osworn Eye, just attack and then maybe some energy recharge. put it like C tier 2, very low C tier. Wander and Even Star is going to give you a decent amount of elemental mastery. The passive I don't think is going to be that useful. It's just going to give you some attack based on your elemental mastery. It can be a little good on Lauma since she does need some attack in some of her kit. And it can also give attack to your party members, which I also don't think is going to be useful in most of her teams. So I just think of it as an elemental mastery stat stick and that's it. I'll just put it B tier. For fulfillment is going to be pretty decent too. It's just enter recharge and then it can give you some elemental mastery from the passive. Even though you lose attack, but I think it's fine. Just keep it B tier too. Sacrificial Jade is just some crit rate. I guess C tier. Lone Purity, just D tier. Ballad of the Boundless Blue, it's just some energy recharge, so I keep it C tier. Ashgraven Drinking Horn, D tier. Wave Riding Whirl, it's just a lot of energy recharge. I also keep it C tier, I guess. Ring of Yakshay, just D tier. We have the event weapon, it's actually gonna be pretty good. It was like super OP at some point, I think, but they nerfed it. Now the substat is gonna be energy recharge instead of elemental mastery, but especially since you can R5 it, it can give you a huge amount of elemental mastery, like 200, and then a lot of energy recharge, and that's like what Lauma needs. So I think it's probably going to be the best free to play option in general. Honestly, I'd keep it S tier. There's not many weapons you really want to use instead. So yeah, it's a free to play weapon, and I think S tier is going to be worth it for this weapon. Tell me if you guys disagree. I think even after the nerfs, it's still an S tier weapon in my opinion. It's just basically everything she needs. We have the Not Quite Craftable. It's going to give you elemental mastery as a substat, a lot of it, and then it's going to increase your bloom damage and lunar bloom damage, which is always pretty good. So I think I'd also put it at S tier. It's basically also pretty much everything you need. It's just lunar damage bonus and then elemental mastery, so it's pretty good. I don't think many weapons can rival it, so I'll just put it at S tier too. Now, moving on to the 5-star options, we're not really going to see many of them being good here because, as I said before, their main things, which is like the high base stack, crit, and stuff like that, are not really going to be that useful in Lauma. Starting off with the Skyward Atlas, it's just going to be an attack stat stick, so it's going straight to D tier. Last Prayer, just some crit rate, I guess it's going to C tier. Memory of Dust is just an attack stat stick. Honestly, I just keep it at like D tier, maybe C tier, just because attack is not fully useless, but yeah. Jade Falls Splendor, it's just HP, maybe some damage bonus, I guess. Like C tier, low C tier. Everlasting Moonglow, D tier. Digress Verity, just for the crit damage. I also like C tier. Thousand Floating Dreams is pretty good. It's gonna give you a huge amount of elemental mastery. It's just basically an elemental mastery stat stick, but it's gonna give you a huge amount, probably like 300 elemental mastery. Plus, it's also gonna buff the elemental mastery of the rest of your party members. So I think it's gonna be a pretty decent weapon. There's not much better usually, so I'd keep it at S tier, but I'd put it low S tier. Honestly, I think that even the free to play weapons here are gonna be better still, but it's a good elemental mastery stat stick if you still want to use it. Lightless Remembrance, just crit damage, C tier 2. Cash Flow Supervision, C tier 2. Some of the Eternal Flow, just C tier. All of these just for the crit, really. Actually, Cash Flow is gonna be like, it's a very small crit rate stat, so it's not even gonna be useful almost at all. Crane's Echoing Call, it's just attack, completely useless. I just put it like D tier. Surfs Up, crit damage, I guess like C tier, just for the huge crit damage stat. Star Scholar's Watch is gonna be elemental mastery, which is pretty good. It's basically just gonna be an elemental mastery stat stick, like 300 plus elemental mastery. I put it under the Floating Dreams just because it's not gonna give your teammates elemental mastery, but it's gonna be just an elemental mastery stat stick, a huge one, the best elemental mastery stat stick basically you can get. So yeah, I'd also keep it at S tier. Sunny Morning Sleeping, it's also an elemental mastery stat stick, so I'd just keep it the same. I'd put it like low S tier. It probably can give you in the range of like 300, maybe a little less, so it's gonna be around the same. I'd keep it low S tier too. Vivid Notions, it's just crit damage basically, and then some attack increase. I'd just put it as C tier 2. C tier is just fully filled. And then finally we have her signature weapon. It's going to be an elemental mastery stat stick. It's going to give you like 300 plus elemental mastery. Plus it's going to give you a huge amount of damage bonus to your bloom damage, which is pretty rare. And then it's also going to buff your hyper bloom and burgeon damage and stuff like that, which is pretty good. Also your lunar bloom damage. So obviously it's going to be the perfect weapon for Lauma. Obviously it's going to be the top of S tier. I think it's going to be considerably better than all of these weapons, even at S tier, just because it's going to buff your team-wide damage in general, not only give you elemental mastery and stuff like that. So it's definitely going to be her best weapon. It's a good 5-star for sure. As you guys can see here, she doesn't really have many weapon options, but she does have free-to-play weapon options, so I think that's fair in my opinion. A lot of the 5-star weapons are just going to be almost completely useless, but you also have your free-to-play weapons, so you can just use them on her and that's it. And if you want to get her signature, it's definitely going to be pretty good in the bloom, hyper bloom, lunar bloom teams for sure. It's going to be giving you huge amounts of damage bonus, and it's also going to be giving a huge amount of elemental mastery to Lauma, which is pretty good. The only thing that it doesn't give you is going to be energy recharge, but I think think that's fine. You can just get it from like your sands or something like that, and you're gonna be fine. But yeah, tell me what weapons you guys are gonna be using in the comments. Please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.